I'm going to do a little introduction of Dr. Robert L. Wallace, or Bobby Wallace, as he's known to his friends and during the campaign. I have been friends with Bob and his wife, Carolyn, and all of his children for over 20 years. And I know him to be a very compassionate individual, a man of faith, a man of great energy and wisdom. And I'm always proud to say Bob is one of my closest friends.
Man.
And I think my goal here is to not only introduce you, but during the course of this interview, allow people to really understand you and your campaign and your motivation behind taking on a challenge that frankly has never been accomplished.
Right.
So it's with great pleasure that I'm going to introduce Bobby Wallace to everyone. So Bob, why don't you just say a couple words?
Sure, absolutely. Well, this is always a pleasure, Steve, and thank you, Steve, for your friendship and your mentorship over the years. And I'm always excited to share with people my vision for Baltimore City, my vision as to why I'm running for mayor and why I think this is the right time for me. I'm a Baltimore native, native son, born and raised in Cherry Hill in South Baltimore community. And I went to school here as far as K through 12, going to Poly and then on to UPenn, study engineering, and then Dartmouth for my MBA. And then in between that, working for corporate America, IBM, Procter & Gamble, Westinghouse, DuPont, before becoming an entrepreneur. So Steve and I share that journey as entrepreneurs, as serial entrepreneurs. And so we have a shared destiny and a shared personal and life experiences. And I think that we are at a crossroads in terms of the city of Baltimore. I feel that if we don't make some really difficult choices now in our city, starting with the leadership that needs to change, and then next with the structural changes that need to occur, I think our city's going to be in trouble. I think we're going to we're in danger of becoming a shell city. And I think all of us would not be happy with that outcome. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm involved in this race. It is probably one of the most difficult challenges I've ever faced in terms of my professional career. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth making the effort to make that happen. So that's the opening thought, Steve, in terms of why I'm doing this and how we got here.
So that's great. So one of the things that I say all the time, people don't really care. People don't really care how much you know. They really want to know how much you care.
Amen.
So I want you to share a little bit about you on a personal note, and tell the story of your accomplishments in Africa and Tanzania
Absolutely.
In particular.
Absolutely. Well, most of you who know me know that I'm a man of faith. And we're taught, the Bible tells us that to whom much is given, much is required. And what that means is, as you have been blessed, then you ought to be paying that forward, right? And blessing others. And so my whole life has been about, paying it forward. I'll start with, my upbringing in poverty. My mom, one of 5 boys, my mom was a janitor in the school system in Baltimore City schools. She was also, she struggled with alcoholism. My mother was a recovering alcoholic. Daddy was a laborer at Bethlehem Steel and other places that he could get jobs. And so, we came through a period where there was scarcity of resources in our family. We didn't have food sometimes. We didn't have heat in the winter sometimes. We didn't have, the securities that most people take for granted. But by God's grace and by hard work and education and 2 parents, mom and daddy, who were there and who kept us together, we were able, my brothers and I, to transition from poverty to a better life. My older brothers, they chose the career as career military men. They became professional soldiers and they did very well in life. I chose to go to college, my younger brother and I, and, we were able to make a decent life for ourselves and for our families. But it didn't stop there, because again, to whom much is given, much is required. So we launched a nonprofit about 30 years ago called Global Vessels. And what we do is we look at the issues and needs of humanity, whether it is food systems, whether it's water systems, whether it's churches or orphanages, whatever it is. We identify what the need is. We marshal resources, financial, engineering, technical, physical, and we help to meet those needs on a global level. So as Steve mentioned, we built orphanages in Tanzania, we built churches in Ghana, we put in help water systems in Liberia, we did some things in Zimbabwe, churches in Brazil, we've reached out some things, starting to do some things in Southeast Asia. And then even locally, in terms of what we can do locally in Mississippi, and even here in Baltimore. So my life has been a life of servant leadership. Steve and I are very similar in that way. We believe that, we've been given much, we've been blessed much, and there's a responsibility that comes with that. And we take that very seriously. I take it very seriously. And that would be the kind of mayor that I would be too, Steve. I would be a servant leader mayor. Whereas I understand that I work for the people of Baltimore City. They don't work for me. And that's a whole different paradigm that I've seen from coming from City Hall recently. So that's who I am. That's what I would bring to City Hall, Steve.
So I want to touch on the fact that you're running as an independent.
Yes, sir.
And I really want to touch on something that really has occurred in the last couple days and have you tie in your independent run with a little bit of Brandon Scott controversy, where Brandon spoke at the Democrat National Convention.
Right.
He was very critical of our governor, very critical of our president and vice president and Fort McHenry. And in the meantime, while people are out there in public service and they're picking fights with people who should really be helping the citizens of Baltimore.
Right.
So as an independent, I know you. You want teammates and you will take help from any corner. You can get along with
That's correct.
Anybody. And as people are out there picking fights, the citizens of Baltimore are suffering. So tie in kind of the recent events with Brandon Scott and his behavior, and then kind of explain how that relates to the fact that you will be the first time an independent has ever been elected mayor of Baltimore.
Absolutely, Steve. So it's funny that you asked that question, Steve, because this weekend we were out canvassing in Baltimore, and it's clear that some of Brandon's people, when they come to attack me, they attack me in terms of, Governor Hogan and my relationship with the governor, and they attack me as, Trump, and does Trump, all these things. And let me be very clear. Let me be very clear. I'm an independent thinking man, and I've always been that way. And I am not backing down from this. The Governor Hogan and I are very good friends. I have a great deal of respect for Governor Hogan, and I could work with Governor Hogan as mayor of Baltimore. Do we agree on everything? No, we do not. And so that's how friends are. Friends can choose to disagree and still be friends and still be able to work together. It doesn't matter to me who's in the White House in terms of my role as mayor. Whoever's in the White House, I must build a relationship with that man or that woman because they are the president of the United States. Do I have to agree with all their politics? No, I do not. And so that's not a factor here. The factor is how can we work together, we being the mayor, the governor, and whoever's in the White House, to help the people of Baltimore and to help solve the problems of our city. And that's what a leader does. This childish thing Brandon does in terms of, the governor's Republican, the president's Republican, and we can't somehow work together. That's just foolishness. It is foolishness, and it hurts the people of Baltimore City who need help. People are struggling. People are in pain. People are in poverty. They're losing their jobs. This is not time to play those petty games. And I'm not going to play them, Steve. I'm not going to play those games. And so as an independent, I have that freedom. I have the freedom to be who I am, the freedom to work for the people and not for politics.
Well, and it's kind of interesting to me because there's a great divide between Brandon, who is a young man and somewhat accomplished. I mean, if you know, in your view, if you're a career politician and he's been elected to city council as a young man, he's the city council president, to some degree, certainly been accomplished. He's trying to build a name for himself and a career. Kind of explain your role as a servant leader coming in towards the end of your career, where your only mission is to create a better life, reduce the violence, create opportunities. Kind of talk about where you are in your career, kind of what made you come to this decision, and where you feel that Baltimore needs to go. This is clearly not at this stage. This is not a stepping stone. You don't want to be somebody's lieutenant governor. You're not going to run for the U.S. Senate. You're not going to run for president. Brandon is trying to build his reputation and career.
Right.
But while he's building this career, that's been more important than the citizens of Baltimore. So kind of tie all that together.
Well, you know, as you said, Steve, I mean, I don't have anything against Mr. Scott. I mean, Mr. Scott is a Baltimore native son. I'm proud of him as a native son of Baltimore. Now he has chosen to build his career in City Hall. So my point is that he spent his whole career so far in City Hall for the last 10 years. And so as I look at the city's performance over the last 10 years, Mr. Scott has been had a front row seat at the city's performance over the last 10 years. Even recently as chairing the public safety committee of the council. So he cannot come to the people now and say, I'm a fresh way forward. I'm a new way forward, because he's got 10 years of legacy decisions and choices that represents who he is. You know, my father used to always say, when a man or woman, when they show you who they are, you should believe them. And so as I look at Mr. Scott showing us who he is, I believe him, and that he is a career politician that has been bound by the constraints of his party and the constraints of politics, and just, you know, talk a good game, but it's like there's nothing there. And so that's obvious to most people who pay attention. What I'm bringing to the table is someone that has spent over 30 years building businesses, creating jobs, bringing people together to solve complex problems, right? And in the process, helping people to a better life, right? So that's what I have done. I've raised 5 children, my 5 children. They're all adult children now. They're doing very well. I've got 8 grandchildren. We're part of raising those grandchildren. So, you know, we've brought CEOs together and corporations together to do great things, to solve problems. And that's the same kind of skills I would bring as mayor of Baltimore. And as you look at the new environment that we are marching into, we Baltimore as a city, the state of Maryland, our country, and the world, it's going to be defined by crisis after crisis after crisis. I mean, right now we're in COVID-19, the pandemic, right? Do not think this is the end. This is just the beginning of the new reality that we're facing as a people and as a society. And I would ask the people of Baltimore, what kind of leader do you want to help guide you and lead you through these kinds of crisis-based environments? And I don't think Mr. Scott has the experience, nor does he have the life experiences to help be prepared to take us there. And so I believe that because of that, I think that I'm a better choice than Mr. Scott. And it doesn't make him a bad person. It just means that we have a different life experiences. And I think that my life experiences map better to what the city needs right now as far as the kind of leader that can get us through these crises and get us to a whole new level. I see Baltimore going to Baltimore 2.0 and being a great city, like it was when I was a kid in Cherry Hill. And I think we can get back to that point and better than that point with the right leadership.
Talk about the level of violence in the city. I think that the reality of the violence is staggering.
It's staggering.
I think that the reputation of Baltimore and the violence across this country might even be worse than it actually is. And then I know you and I have had this conversation because I know we both feel that people don't wake up every day and say, I want to be a bad guy. I want to commit a crime. I want to rob somebody. I want to sell drugs. People maneuver to the lowest common denominator and a way that they know. And I think that there's, so draw the parallel both to the violence with the lack of opportunity and kind of address those 2 points, please.
Well, I think, Steve, that's one of the things that I think makes me a unique candidate compared to my peers. One is, I was born in poverty in Cherry Hill. I have personally experienced the violence and the trauma of violence in my own personal life. Many of my friends who I grew up with in Cherry Hill have also dealt with that. And so I've also had the opportunity to create a path out of poverty into a better life. And that's another experience that I bring, where I go from poverty to the board of directors of companies and different organizations. So I bring a full spectrum of knowledge and understanding in that area. What I have learned is this, as Steve and I've talked about, what I've learned is this, is that men and women that I know who have made bad choices, who have become bad actors, right? They don't wake up in the morning and say, gee, I want to be a drug dealer, or I want to be a drug addict, or I want to be a stick-up artist, or I want to rob somebody. They don't wake up that way. It is the conditions in which men and women are forced to live that creates an environment that makes those choices the easiest choices for them to make in terms of life choices. And so they make that mistake, and then there are consequences that they pay. So I understand the root of poverty. And so I understand that the issue of crime and violence, it is a systemic issue that is complicated. So it's not just, and I don't believe that we can just police our way out of this issue. There's other matters that have to be addressed, like housing and economic opportunity and workforce development and all these things. Now, having said that, I also recognize that we have a crisis situation right now. We have an epidemic of violence in our city right now that has to be addressed. Because if we do not do that, if we don't address that, that will impact everything else in our city. It will impact businesses leaving the city or coming or not coming into the city. It will impact families who decide to leave because they're afraid for themselves and for their families. So the crime thing really impacts everything else. So what do we do? What we do is, number one, we stop having this revolving door reality with our police commissioner, right? So Commissioner Harrison, I met him numerous times, looked at his approach to this. I think he has a plan that can work if we give him the resources and we get behind him and support him. And so as mayor, that's what I would plan to do, and jumping out in the very beginning, understanding what his plan is, understanding what are the metrics of success, how we're measuring, and then keeping track with him. The second thing I would do, you got a question, Steve?
No, go ahead. Finish.
The second thing I would do is I would take over the political issue of crime and crime fighting. I think the commissioner spends too much time right now dealing with the politics of crime and policing that he shouldn't have to do. That should be me, the mayor. So that's the second thing I would do, is I will deal with the politics matter around crime. Thirdly, what we're going to do, we're going to focus what's called focused deterrence. We're going to focus law enforcement resources in the zip codes and in the neighborhoods where these crimes of violence are occurring. If you look at a map of Baltimore, you will find that most of the crimes occur in certain zip codes. And what you will also find is that many of the people who commit the crimes are repeat offenders. So these are not first-time offenders in most cases; they're repeat offenders. So we know who they are, we know where they live, right? And we focus on those guys. It's mostly guys. And what we do is we meet with them, we get them, and we say, look, we know who you are, we know where you live. We're going to bring some resources to help you make better choices. So if it's a job, we're going to try to work with you on a job. If it's mental illness in some capacity, we're going to do what we can for you in mental illness. If it's homelessness, we're going to try to work with you in that to bring resources to help you wrap around what we call wraparound resources to help these men and women, mostly men, help them make better choices, right? And we hope that they will take the path of better choices. Now, the third part is this. I call it the ABC. A is abstain from the behavior. B is I will bring to bear as mayor wraparound resources to help you, sir, to make a better choice. But the C are consequences. In other words, if you choose to still decide that you want to take a gun and you want to harm somebody, a citizen of this city, then we will come at you, we will prosecute you, and we'll put you in prison, right? And I'm not talking about, criminalizing the whole race of people, right? Because as an African-American man being raised in Cherry Hill, I'm very sensitive to the historical relationship between the Black community and police as an institution. I'm very sensitive to that. And I know that it has some work to be done to rebuild that trust. What I'm talking about is men who have made a choice that they're going to take a gun and they're going to kill people and shoot people. We've had women, Steve, in their 70s shot recently. The other weekend, we had 15 people shot. Some of them died. We've had 13-year-old kids being shot. We even had a pregnant woman who was shot. This is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And we have to shock it back into reality, right? By making people hold them accountable for choices that are made where they decide to hurt people, to hurt you, to hurt me, to hurt our families, our babies. They must be held accountable. And I will use the local resources. I will use state resources with the governor, and I'll use federal resources to do what's necessary to get those kinds of men off the street so that our families and communities are protected. They are a very small percent of the community. The people who commit the crimes in these neighborhoods, they are a very, very small percentage. Most of the people in those neighborhoods like Cherry Hill and East Baltimore and West Baltimore are decent, hardworking people just like you and I. They're trying to make a decent living for their families, and they struggle. They're the good guys. It's the bad guys that we're trying to get to and get off the streets.
Great. So let's just change the tone a little bit. Tell me what you love about Baltimore.
I love the people. I love the people of Baltimore. I mean, look, my friends that come down from like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and when they come down and visit me and they spend time in Baltimore City, every single one of them say, Bob, Baltimore's a great place to live. I mean, and then they hear all the bad news. They hear about the wire and all that. But when they come here and they spend time here, they say, wow, this is a great place to live. And it really, really is. But it's the people. It's the neighborhood, Steve. It's the people. It's the institutions like Morgan State University and Johns Hopkins and Coppin, University of Maryland. We got Kennedy Krieger Institute. We got Fort McHenry. We've got these great neighborhoods, great history. Boy, we got great DNA. We got strong bones in Baltimore City. What we need to do is keep putting that flesh on the bones so we can be what we should be. But it's the people, Steve, that I love, the people.
Talk about how you feel about the city connecting and working with the surrounding counties, that no one's an island.
Right.
And our surrounding counties seem to be doing so much better than the city. Talk about how you might work with the counties to benefit the city.
So I think, Steve, first there needs to be a recognition that, as you said, we're all in this together, and also a recognition, Steve, that the city has become a magnet for the least of these. Now, who are the least of these? These are the drug addicted people. These are the opioid addicted people. These are people who are in poverty. Baltimore has become a magnet for those kinds of people because they know that they can probably get a better chance of getting resources to help them get through their situation. So what my regional partners need to understand is that reality, and that as Baltimore goes, so do they. And so we need to have a regional approach, which I've always endorsed, even when I was vice chair with Ron Peterson on the Baltimore Workforce Investment Board. We're working to do workforce investment, that we had a regional approach working with the counties to make that happen. Baltimore is the biggest city, most important city in the state of Maryland. And as Baltimore goes, so goes the state, so goes the counties. So this idea that we are a village, we are a true village, needs to be really appreciated and exploited for us to have regional solutions to our challenges, not just the city.
So talk a little bit about the dwindling population of Baltimore, which also means a dwindling tax base. And then talk about the 15 to 20,000 vacant homes in the city. So talk about those two things might come together for the benefit of citizens, opportunities, taxes, and population.
So all these things, Steve, they all are interdependent. So if you talk about crime, what crime does is it drives away business, high crime, it drives away families, it decreases the middle class, but it increases the concentration of poverty in our city. So what's happened is we have this concentrated poverty in Baltimore City, which is in many cases, multi-generational. So that's a challenge. But tied to that is the crime. And so the idea is that we have to build a city that will be attractive to not only families, but to investors. Well, they want to come in and invest money, to entrepreneurs who come to create businesses and create jobs, and to job creators, right? So there are a couple of structural things that need to change to make that happen, to make the Baltimore competitive as a competitive location to the region and the surrounding counties. Well, what are the structural things? Number one is the tax system that we have. Baltimore City's property tax is twice that of the surrounding counties. So if I'm an investor with money to invest, and I got to choose between Baltimore, which has this high tax rate, and in Baltimore County, guess what? I'm probably going to go to Baltimore County. So one thing I'm going to do as mayor, and this is where it takes courage, is to get our property tax rate competitive with the property tax rate of surrounding counties. And we have a plan in which that we think we can make that happen. Also structurally, you mentioned, Steve, that the 15, 20,000 vacant homes in Baltimore City. Well, some see that as a liability, and it is, but I see it as an asset. Because think about this, if we can put together either a public-private partnership or some kind of investment fund that will focus on developing these 15, 20,000 vacant properties into properties where people can buy the homes and be homeowners, then we're going to be in a better place as a city. So my plan is to create that fund, whether it's a public-private partnership or some kind of REIT or some kind of TIF that we put together to focus on rebuilding those homes. Now, how do we do that? We rebuild them using people in the city. If you look at the unemployment rate in the city and across zip codes, there are certain zip codes where the unemployment is through the roof. We know where they are. They're East Baltimore, they're West Baltimore, they're South Baltimore. So we focus on those people who are unemployed, who can provide the skills as carpenters, as laborers, as electricians, as plumbers, as bricklayers, and we use them to rebuild these 20,000 vacant properties. In addition to that, we use the kids in our school system who have this tied to my education plan, who are working on becoming carpenters, plumbers, electricians, bricklayers. See, I don't believe that every child has to go to college. I know a lot of successful men and women who did not go to college and who are doing very, very well. So we know that you don't have to go to college to be successful. And so some may go to college, but others may go into careers. So we use these kids in the public school system who are on these tracks to use them to rebuild these 20,000 vacant properties. And look what that does. It rebuilds that tax base that we know that we don't have right now. It provides people pride in their work. We provide them a path to become homeowners of some of those homes. So there's a lot of great benefits here that we can do by taking a liability, which is these vacant homes, and turning it into tax generating neighborhood building assets.
So as men of faith, and I know that you are an ordained elder within your church
Yes,
community.
I am.
Talk about faith, the role of the church in terms of building hope and community. not everything really emanates from City Hall. You and I have had
Exactly.
the discussion at times that if you want to take longer and spend more money, give it to government. If you want to do it quicker, faster, more effective and efficiently, give it to a mama, give it to somebody in the church, or give it to an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
But talk about the role of the faith community in rebuilding and changing the dynamic and creating hope for people.
Oh, you bet, Steve. So if you look at my seven platforms that I hope to implement as mayor, one of the platforms is empowering the faith-based community. So whether you're a rabbi or a pastor or a bishop or a sheik, whatever it is, I want to work with the faith-based communities in order to provide them the resources for them to do what they do. Now, what do they do? I don't care what faith you are, whether you're a Christian or a Jew or you're a Muslim or Hindu, whatever it is. Most people's reliance on faith is that faith is an empowerment. It is an empowering experience that gives people hope. It gives them hope. And so I was raised Baptist, and that was what my upbringing was. Some of my friends were raised Jewish, some were raised Presbyterian, Catholic, Muslim. It's the same dynamic. Religion and the faith-based community gives us hope and gives us the belief that our tomorrow will be better than our today. And so it is the hope that I think is the building block of transforming our neighborhoods. Because as a man thinketh in his heart, or woman, if they think in their heart, so are they. And what we mean by that is, if you can think it and believe it, then you can achieve it, right? And so in my own personal life, my parents were very good at instilling in us the faith in God, that if we did the right things and worked hard, got educated, that we could change our lives. And they were right. Mom and daddy were right. And we were able to do that. But faith was the foundation of that. And so I think that as mayor, what I hope to do is to work with the faith-based community to empower them by, as mayor, coming up beside them and working with them to do what they do in our communities, that we can transform our communities quicker and more efficiently. And I hope that the people of the city will see that and get behind it, because I think it's so powerful. It's a powerful thing. And look at my own personal life, and I say that's what helped me and my family to get through difficult times, was our faith. And so the faith-based community's role to success becomes even more paramount.
So there are very, very difficult mountains to climb in terms
Yes.
of population, resources, education, job opportunity, job
Yes, sir.
training. So one of the things that it's not overly complicated, but it seems like the city has struggled with just the basic of functions. Talk about trash.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Steve. I mean, I guess it's the engineer in me, where I've worked for corporations and operations type jobs where we had difficult problems to solve. And we use engineering and operations strategy and those things to address these issues. I think, Steve, that the issue of trash, of grime, I think that with the right leadership and the right strategy, that we can solve these problems. I mean, I think we just have leaders who are very limited. They have low capacity for innovating, low capacity for thinking through problems. And I'm not denigrating them. I'm just stating a fact. They think very narrowly, right, in terms of solutions. And I think what I bring as an engineer and as an entrepreneur is that we've been trained and taught to think divergently, that there are many possible solutions to solving these problems. I mean, I've been pushing and for the city to consider putting together some PPP, some part partnership between the city and trash collection businesses to help get this trash out of the city. Now the citizens also need to play a role in this, because people need to own their neighborhoods and own their environment. I mean, there's a problem we have now in the city where people will hire a trash remover for a very low fee, right, to take trash out of their backyards and out of their alleys. Well, what they don't understand is that hauler has to pay a larger fee to be able to dump that trash. So think about the dynamics here, the economics. So if I take a dollar, but it costs me $10 to dump it, then what do you think I'm going to do as the dumper? I'm going to take that trash, I'm going to dump it someplace else, not where it should be dumped, but in some other neighborhood. And that's what's happening in Baltimore City today. So the citizens need to be responsible for that as well. So it has to be the people and the government can be a lot more creative, Steve, in terms of how they're solving these problems. And they're just not. Either they've checked out, Steve, or they don't care. But either option is a bad option, as far as I'm concerned.
All right. So as we're wrapping up today, Bob Wallace makes history. You're the first independent candidate to be elected mayor of Baltimore. And we are approaching the end of your first term as mayor. Paint a picture of what that Baltimore looks like, and in your heart and your vision and your prayers, where we are 4 years of a Bob Wallace administration.
Great question, Steve. Great closing question. So I have built my life and my businesses on this principle, and that is, if you want to be successful, what you do is you create the future that you want. You create it, right? And then you work backwards. You create it, and then you work backwards. So I would hope that by the end of my first term, that number one, that we as a city have a clear vision of the future Baltimore that we want to see happen. And the way we're going to do that, I'm going to host a number of community and conference events where we bring all the stakeholders together across the 7 platforms that I've laid out in my plan to be mayor. And we're going to lay out the objectives and the key results that we're going to measure to determine how well we're achieving those objectives. And I hope that in my first term, we have a clear vision on the future of what Baltimore, what we want our Baltimore to look like. 2, that we have clarity on the objectives that we all agree upon that we're going to measure to determine our success and how we're progressing. Because what I want the people at Baltimore to do, Steve, is to hold me accountable. See, I'm not one of them kind of leaders that runs and hides when things get tough, things get bad. No, I'm out in front of my people. The buck stops here. Hold me accountable, right? So when I set those objectives and the key results to measure them by, I'm saying to the people, hold me accountable. And how we're going to do that? We're going to create a dashboard, Steve, that will be open to all the people of the city, 24/7. And on that dashboard, it will be these objectives that Mayor Wallace has said we're going to accomplish. These are the key measurements that we're measuring. And this is where we stand today. And therefore, they will see how much progress or lack of progress is being made. And then thirdly, the thing I do first year, Steve, is we take control of how we tell our Baltimore story. See, I think what has happened in the past, we've allowed others to tell our story. And so when they tell our story, all they talk about is what's wrong in Baltimore. When we take control of telling our story, I'm not going to hide from the problems and challenges, but I'm also going to tell you what is working. I'm going to tell you about our institutions and our businesses who are doing wonderful things and how we're building our neighborhoods back up. I'm going to tell that story. So those 3 things, Steve, is what I would say in my first year that we will have accomplished. Oh, and one more thing, Steve, I didn't mention. That is, when I come in the first 100 days, I'm going to initiate a forensic audit of every city agency that will be paid for by outside private resources, not the citizens. Because what I want to do is, I'm coming in as fresh mayor, I want to know what is the real status of every agency in my city. How's the money coming in? How is it being used? What's being wasted? I want to know in the first 100 days what that's going to be. So that's the 4th thing I would do, Steve, in my first year.
Very good. So because I'm a little bit of a rookie at interviewing, what question should I have asked today that I didn't?
Well, Steve, I think people ask me all the time. They're kind of puzzled. They're like, well, Bobby, you've built your business, you've raised your family, You raised 5 kids, 8 grandkids. You've traveled the world. I mean, why would you want to take on what will most likely be one of the most difficult jobs that anyone could take on there? I mean, Bobby, you could move to Florida and chill and play golf and, not have to worry about this. And I say to those people, yes, that is true. I could do that. But I choose to do otherwise. Why? Because to whom much is given, much is required. So for me, Steve, this is a calling. It's not a job. I don't need a job, Steve. I don't need any more responsibilities. This is a calling. It is a calling to have impact on the lives of people who are calling out. They're screaming, somebody help us. Somebody give us hope. Somebody give us a direction that we can believe in. Somebody give us the belief, help us rebuild that belief that we can be better. We can be better tomorrow than we are today, right? Because when I take my last breath on this earth, when I'm on my deathbed and I'm about to take my last breath, and we all going to pass that way, newsflash, right? I want to be able to look back over my life and say, you know what? I made a difference in the lives of people. I made a difference in the quality of life of people. I made a difference in giving people hope. And if I can have that kind of review of my life before I take my last breath on this earth, I will be a happy man and I can go to my rest in peace. For me, that's important. To me, that's important. And so that's why I'm doing this. It's that simple.
Well, I want to thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure for me to interact, and hopefully between the two of us, we got people out there to really understand Bob Wallace, the man.
Yes.
And then Bob Wallace with the plan.
Absolutely.
So thank you very, very much. And it was my pleasure. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope you did as well.
I did.
Bless you, Brother Wallace.
Yes, sir. Same to you, sir. Thank you,
Steve. Very much.
Thank you.